In this episode of Our Mountains, Mom is in the kitchen baking a delicious apple pie.
We'll have some great music from Mitch Barrett.
And Rhonda talks with a leading expert on honeybees. It's all coming up on Our Mountains.
Welcome to Our Mountains. I'm Rhonda Brashear.
I'm Dean Osborne.
And I'm Joel Brashear. And folks, we got a special guest with us today. His name is Mitch Barrett. He's a singer that we've all known for several years now. And he classifies his music as Americana. It's sort of a mix of folk and bluegrass and blues. And that got me thinking, what's the difference between folk and bluegrass music?
How long have you got?
It's a 30-minute show.
We've got a whole semester-long class on that, but boiling it down into a few seconds, folk generally comes out of a tradition of being cause and in some cases protest-oriented. You have artists like Woody Guthrie, Gene Ritchie, Pete Seeger. Those are classic, what we would consider folk artists. The bluegrass tradition, of course, the father of bluegrass being Bill Monroe, and everything that came after that. I'm sure he'd be glad that I described it that way, but he is the father of what we would consider modern bluegrass music. He took a lot of elements of those different things, as does folk music these days. Mitch Barrett's a great artist, and I'm looking forward to hearing him.
Let's take a listen to Mitch and his special guest, Melly Youngblood. This is True Love Don't Weep.
True love don't weep, true love don't mourn. You got 'em in the heart when the heart gets torn. When the heart gets torn, I see you, I hope you see me too. True love don't weep, true love don't mourn. You got 'em in the heart when the heart gets torn. Go over to the window and stand right there. I wanna see the sunlight in your hair. True love don't weep, true love don't mourn. You got 'em in the heart when the heart gets torn. When the heart gets torn. Well, bless your heart and hush your mouth. We got plenty of time to figure this out. True love don't weep, true love don't mourn. You got 'em in the heart when the heart gets torn. When the heart gets torn.
That was some great music from some great songwriters. When we come back, Rhonda will be in her kitchen giving us her take on an American classic, apple pie. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
At Frontier Nursing University, our mission is to educate nurse midwives and nurse practitioners through distance education. With 75 years in Kentucky, our students and graduates have a passion for personalized care for women and families. Do you share this passion? Visit frontier.edu.
Who doesn't love apple pie? The old saying, as American as apple pie. Well, today I'm going to show you how I make mine. It's very easy, but it's so good. Now, I use these refrigerated pie crust. I can't make a pie crust any better than these. So I've got 2 here, and I've let them soften up in the room temperature just to make it easy to unroll. And you can see that it's just almost doing itself. I put this in my pie plate and just turn it, mold it with your fingers, pat it down. Simple. Let the top stick out just a little bit because you're going to overlap that in a little bit. Okay. Now, I have cut up some Granny Smith apples. To me, they're the best in this pie. And I've made them pretty thin, as you can see. And I've got about 5 cups, I've estimated. I think I did 8 apples. So about 5 to 6 cups of apples. Now to that, I'm going to add a cup of sugar. Now these apples are tart, so they do need a cup of sugar. And about a 1/4 cup of flour. I like using this flour because it's so fine and it just really mixes in easily. And then I'm going to add some cinnamon, about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more. Pinch of salt, a little bit of vanilla. And to all that, I'm going to just mix it up. The flour and the sugar will coat these pieces of apple as well as the cinnamon and the vanilla. It smells wonderful already. Then we'll add just a little bit more flour. I like my apple pie to stick together when I cut it. And then you just pour the apples, all this mixture into your pie shell. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Have that ready. And if you've got too many apples, that's okay. Just pile them on there because as they cook, they will boil down, they'll cook down. And put all of that sugar in there too. And then just space all of this so that it's equal. Now before I put my top shell on, I'm going to add some real butter. Just dot it with butter all the way around. This will just make all those juices so much richer. I think that'll do it, about 2 tablespoons. And then the top pie shell. Tears a little bit, that's okay, you can fix it. Just lay that on top. Pinch it together. Now, the bottom shell and the top shell, you need to pinch them together. It doesn't have to be beautiful. You can do it as fancy or as simple as you'd like. But I just use my fingers. Once you get all that, there's my oven ready. All right. Perfect timing. Now, I'm going to vent this. It's got a little vent already there, but I'm going to put just a few little vents. Put it in the oven. I'm going to bake it for about an hour. Here's the apple pie, still warm right out of the oven. I'm going to let this sit for just a few minutes and then put some really good French vanilla ice cream on top. Dean, Joel, you want a piece of pie?
Now, Dean, I think that'd be the perfect addition for Dino's Diner.
I think this is the year. I'm going to keep holding out. We're going to do a Dino's Diner show.
It's going to happen.
Of course, you can only fry eggs so many ways. If you like these recipes that Miss Rhonda is preparing on the program, check out our Facebook page or the address on your screen, and you can try them at home. I'm going to.
Now, folks, when we come back, Mom's with Dr. Tammy Horn. She's the Kentucky Apiarist, and she's going to tell us all about honeybees. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
One voice, unifying banking in Kentucky, our Commonwealth. We are the Kentucky Bankers Association. We are the KBA. The KBA is a nonprofit trade organization that has been providing legislative, compliance, education, and vendor solutions to its member institutions since 1891. The KBA's directors and staff work together with its members to make the financial services industry in Kentucky a more effective and successful place to work. The mission of the KBA is to provide effective advocacy for banks in Kentucky and on a national level. We strive to serve as a reliable and responsive source of information and education about areas of interest to the Kentucky banker. The strength of the Kentucky Bankers Association is bankers unifying as an industry to speak as one voice. With one voice, we are a Commonwealth.
Passion, personalized care, and a mission to serve women and families in Kentucky. We are Frontier Nursing University. Through distance education and clinicals in your own community, become a nurse midwife and share your passion for women and family care. Visit frontier.edu.
Welcome back to our mountains. I have with me today the state apiarist, Miss Tammy Horn. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so interested today in seeing what you're doing here on your farm. Tell us what's going on around us.
At the moment, the bees are beginning to go into winter cluster. As the days get shorter and the pollen intake into the hives decreases, the bees begin to downsize because they don't want to use all of their honey stores, and so they start decreasing their numbers. And so one of the things that we'll be doing today is treating the bees for a type of parasite called a varroa mite, and we'll make sure that they have more food because we want to make sure that they have enough honey to get through the winter time.
We have this little box here. Why don't you tell us what this is and how it's important in your work?
Okay, one of my primary goals as a state apiarist is to focus on honeybee health and to make sure that we know about approximately how many hives we have in the Commonwealth, and if the bees are dying, why are they dying? Where are they dying? And so we started, when I became apiarist a year ago, with some forms that beekeepers fill out. But forms, for the most part, are always a little bit unreliable. You know, it's difficult to get them to every beekeeper. Some beekeepers don't want to fill them out. So it's primarily anecdotal information. But Kentucky has been included in a federal USDA grant this year, and what I do is go around the Commonwealth and I pick up samples of honeybees from different beekeepers. We included a beekeeper from Johnson County. We'll include a beekeeper from Pike County. Corbin has been represented in this particular grant, and I take a quarter cup of bees from the brood area of the hive, and we put those bees in this box. You'll see it has some sugar down at the bottom of it, so as the bees are in transit to the Washington, D.C. bee lab, then they have adequate sugar to keep them alive. And then there's also a moisture tube, which has some sponge in it, and I take that off. I don't want to forget that, so that bees have moisture as they're being shipped. And then what we do is we put this lid back on top, just like that.
So they can breathe.
So they can breathe, and then we put a yellow funnel here, and that's how I put the bees in.
Oh, okay.
And then we tape it up after we got the bees inside of it, and I take it to the post office, where sometimes I'm not the most popular customer in line, but you know, some of the post office people have gotten used to this. They don't freak out any longer, and we get them shipped to DC, where they are then tested for a variety of viruses and spores and any other type of diseases that our honeybees may be dealing with in Kentucky.
So is this something pretty new for Kentucky?
Very much so. The funding for this particular grant has been in place since 2009, and this is the first year that Kentucky's been included. So I'm really proud of that, and hope that it continues, that the funding continues for this grant.
Good. I know honey is a big thing in Kentucky, the production of honey, but that's only a byproduct, correct?
Correct. Its biggest value is in pollination. And as Kentucky shifts away from big tobacco, you know, one of the things that specialty crop growers are finding is that they absolutely have to have honeybees. And so, you know, for instance, we've got a very active organic tomato industry that is starting, especially among the Amish in the south central part of the state. We have apple orchards in eastern Kentucky that need bees, pumpkins in western Kentucky. So all parts of the Commonwealth have developed this new appreciation for pollinators, and it's happened very recently. And our state, as I said, as we shift away from big tobacco, is also becoming environmentally more friendly to bees, because big tobacco used a lot of chemicals, and so we're starting to see that there's less and less chemicals being used.
More friendly for the bees.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely,
good.
absolutely.
Good. All right. Well, I want to, we're going to feed them today, are we, or treat them?
We're going to treat them. Bees have what's called varroa mites, and varroa mites are like tiny hypodermic needles on the bees, and so we try to get those off of there before the winter time. We don't want the bees going into winter with these tiny hypodermic needles on them.
Now, I understand you've written a couple of books.
Yes, I have. In fact, the first book I wrote is Bees in America, and when I wrote that book, I was an English professor, and I say very clearly at the very first page, you know, if you want to know how to keep bees, this is not the book for you. This is strictly a cultural history. It's candy for the brain. It was the kind of collection of anecdotes and facts and trends in beekeeping. But I was not a good beekeeper 10 years ago. I had a horrible time keeping my smoker lit, which of course today we're not having any problems with that. You know, I was basically terrified of the equipment. I used my grandfather's equipment, which was, you know, deeps, which was very heavy. And so I basically had to decide in 2006 to go to Hawaii and work in the queen bee industry, where I would work bees every day.
That was hard work, I'm sure, wasn't it?
It was, somebody had to do it. Somebody had to do it. And so I went and basically for 4 winters after that, you know, I worked in the queen bee industry, so I could get really comfortable with all the mechanics of beekeeping, as well as some of the more specialized skills in beekeeping, such as rearing queens. And then I would come back when it was warm in Kentucky and work with coal companies in eastern Kentucky, getting beehives on surface mine sites.
So has that been pretty successful?
I thought, you know, the name of the entity was called Coal Country Bee Works, and in my mind, we started in 2008 just as the economy was tanking, and I thought it was very successful because it has put in place a way for people to be beekeepers. We started an Eastern Kentucky Winter Bee School. In fact, if you don't mind, I'll plug that.
Okay, sure.
It will be January the 23rd, 2016. Of course, in the registration fee, we always include lunch, and that's a full day of beginner classes to advanced classes. We offer about 4 different tracks, and we also include value-added products. Things, people don't always want to get in the beehive, but they like the lotions, and they like the candles, and they like those other kinds of products that come with beekeeping. So we have a class on those
And
too.
where will that be, Tammy?
That's at the Hazard Community and Technical College.
We know that well?
Yeah, right off of Highway 15. And we do ask that people pre-register because we do have lunch catered. And so I think that cutoff date is January the 15th.
Okay.
But people can show up at the door and we'll let you in. We don't turn folks away for the Eastern Kentucky Winter Bee School. And we always have a good turnout.
Good.
We worked with 4 different coal companies and still working. We're just, as I became the state apiarist, I wasn't able to take care of the beehives like I wanted to. And so we're working with Extension, elementary schools especially, they're Viper Elementary, and the emphasis this year is on native bees because we have 4,000 native bees in the United States. And so we're trying to get into schools and just make students aware of how much their food depends upon all kinds of pollinators.
Now, your other book was about women and beekeeping, correct?
That is correct. The first book, I did not have enough time to really highlight and profile the amazing women who have been a part of the industry in the past and are shaping it today. So my second book is called Beeconomy: How Women and Bees Influence Local Trade and Global Markets. And it's kind of a long, clunky title, but in this particular book, I'm a beekeeper.
Okay.
And so I have a lot of tips that can help both men and women as a beekeeper.
Very good.
There's a real shift there in terms of who I became. And the entire book it's a global book. I start with my travels in Africa, working with African bees, and then move to India and Europe and Australia, South America, and of course North America. So that book took obviously a little bit longer to write, and it came out in 2012. And as I said, the real shift in tone is the fact that I'm a beekeeper, and I'm a lot more confident, and it's also including different tips of the industry that may help a hobbyist beekeeper. And I'm working on a third book that will be the final chapter of the Bee Trilogy. I call it the Bee Trilogy, the past, present, and future. And that third book will be all about trees and bees.
Oh.
And that is taking a little bit longer to write, but I hope that that's able to come out by 2020.
Okay.
But it looks at what we did on those coal company surface mine sites. It looks at other efforts of reforestation around the world, because I'm convinced that we're drenching our heartland with pesticides, and trees are the go-to place for bees now. That's the safe place.
For those of us who don't want to be a beekeeper, what can we do as environmentalists to help the bees?
Well, there are a couple of things, and I'm glad you asked that question. A lot of people are aware now that we're losing 1 in every 3 beehives every single year. And there are many different reasons why that can be. But one of the things that people who aren't interested in maybe, having to deal with stinging insects in the middle of, 90-degree weather in July. The simple thing to do if they have a garden is just not to spray any of their pesticides until after 3 or 4 p.m. when the foragers of those beehives are already back home.
Okay.
That's one simple thing that they can do. Another thing that they can do is plant pollinator habitat, or because the There's an emphasis now on monarch butterflies, which are also pollinators. You know, they can convert just a tiny portion of their yard, you know, to pollinator habitat, and they'll be so surprised at how pretty it can be and how much activity goes on, and even just a few plants.
Now, I love my flowers. What are some of them, Tammy, that I can plant next year?
Okay, so in the springtime, when bees are coming out of winter cluster, they're really hungry and they need pollen. Pollen is the protein of the hive. And so crocus, planting some crocus bulbs are first thing. In eastern Kentucky, bloodroot is a native that bees will work. Skunk cabbage is a heat. It gives off heat, and you can see the bees clustering around it first thing in the spring, like late February, early March. Bees work dogwood. You know, I had my honey analyzed, and dogwood was 20% of my honey one year. So, you know, those flowering, you know, under canopy trees like redbud and dogwood are really good pollinators. And then in the midsummer, you know, your species would be things like your goldenrods and your purple cone flowers. Asters make a great nectar plant for honeybees as we move into the fall. And then I like to promote witch hazel, because it has pollen. It produces pollen in November when there aren't any other plants producing pollen. So that's a really good pollen plant for bees.
Okay.
And mistletoe produces a flower in the middle of winter. So botanists, you know, a lot of times we could consider it a parasitic plant, but botanists are starting to reconsider its role in ecology. And so, you know, we know we need mistletoe at Christmas time, but try to leave some for the birds and the bees.
All right. Tammy, thank you so much. I've learned a lot today about bees, and I'm going to grow some witch hazel.
Awesome, very good. I've done my job.
All right.
And if folks want to contact me, they're welcome to email me at Tammy, Tammy.Horn, HORN, @ky.gov.
Great. Thank you so much. Now you stay tuned. We'll be right back with lots more of Our Mountains.
Our Mountains is sponsored by Frontier Nursing University, Pioneers for Healthcare. The Kentucky Bankers Association. More than banks, they're your neighbors.